Can also uh, generate boundary cases. This is a way of creating uh, cases for analysis that are based on accommodating a certain percentage of the population on the variables that you care about. This is done by principal component analysis. That's a very common way to uh, determine boundary cases, to select boundary cases. What's unusual about this tool is that you're able to do it on the dimensions that you actually care about. You're not limited to the particular boundary cases that someone else generated, likely for some other purpose. So let's do that. Let's take our a couple of these dimensions here. Actually, let's just use two for now. We'll take that fore-aft dimension and that lateral dimension, and we'll generate boundary cases. So with two dimensions selected, the software is doing a principal component analysis and then defining an ellipsoid in the space of the first two principal components. And then ellipsoid encloses 95% of the population. And there they are. So let's just look at these. They're defined in the space of those two dimensions. So they range from 137 millimeters on the head breadth up to what's the smallest value here? Up to 169 from 137. And the ear to nose dimension is 87 to 105. Now, these won't be the 5th and 95th percentile values because you're considering the bivariate analysis on those dimensions. I'll make this the same dimension here. So these points lie on the perimeter. So just like before, you can view these like the first, hide the main model. The first two of these will be on the first principal component, and they will typically be big and little, but defined statistically. There's the small one. There's the large one. You can see you've defined a set. So the first two are on the first principal component there. The next two will be basically the ratio of the two. If I make the bigger one, how should we make them both transparent? You can see you're looking at a relationship between the two variables, so perpendicular to the first axis. And then these other two are uh, in the quadrants or around the mean. So this is a way of creating a set of boundary cases that you can download and you can use in CAD, and you have defined them using the variables that you care about for your design. You're not limited to what has been done before. Finally, I'll show you the accommodation tab. Because the variables are not 100% correlated, if you accommodate, say, 95% of the population on one variable, you accommodate 95% of the population on another, and so on, you end up with less than a total 95% accommodation. In fact, the more variables that are active as constraints for the fit, the lower the percentage can be. And it's common to lose close to 5% of people on each individual dimension, such that if 4 or 5 dimensions are active, the accommodation can be substantially less than desired. Well, this allows you to do the multivariate accommodation analysis relative to the dimensions that you've picked across the whole population. So let's take a couple of those dimensions again. We'll try that head breadth, and let's put our fore, aft, ear to nose in here. And we'll go over to our dimensions tab to get some values to put in there. So, for example, the 5th to 95th percentile values are 41, 166. Let's put in, let's say we accommodate down to 145 on this, and our range extends all the way up to 160. Well, you see uh, we've accommodated 61% of men and 79% of women for a total of 71 on this variable. We got to do better than that on this variable. Let's expand our range of coverage on this. Let's take this down to 140. Now that's looking a little better. We'll take this up to 165. All right, now we're at about 90%. Well, let's consider this other dimension. This is that 4F dimension. Let's put in some values here. Maybe we can accommodate that range. And here we have about 87% accommodation. But this is what I was talking about. Even though each of these individually is pretty good, our overall accommodation is less than either of these. And even if we build these up, let's expand this so we can get 95% accommodation here. Let's get 95% on this one as well. We're not getting anything more on the tail. I need to get it longer. Yeah, there's 95, 97 and a half, but overall we're only getting 92. And when you add more of these, for example, let's add this nose width dimension in here, and maybe we accommodate from 15 to 19 on that. That's not very good at all. We're going to have to get bigger. Yeah, there we are. We're still losing 16%, even though we're accommodating more than 90% or more than 90% on all individual variables. So that's an overview of the primary functionality. Over here, you can set some preferences, and you can show some landmarks that are predefined, and you can download the shapes, you can download landmarks, you can download the points you've defined, and even definitions, the population data based on the dimensions that you've defined is available on the analysis tab and over here. Please give us feedback and contact us if you have any questions.